So the trailer for Grand Theft Auto 6 launched, and it kind of reaffirms some of the things I've kind of been anxious about in regards to all the just satire. Like, I've kind of been worried about how, as a lot of people have pointed out, real life is kind of getting more bizarre and entertaining in almost a self-parody kind of sense, to where it's getting a little bit more difficult to actually make a good satire, or really just any kind of comedy off of actual observations, or just like real-world events, because there's a lot of just crazy stuff happening, especially in Florida. And I'm not like the first person to have made this observation and wonder if it might cause problems for GTA. Like, probably the best like stand-up comedy bit I've watched recently was someone basically just retelling a story of something that happened in Florida that they saw in a local newspaper, of somebody trying to rob a fast food place with an alligator. Like, it just like threatened to throw it through the drive-thru window, and then did when they wouldn't give him money. But then just kind of drove away because he really didn't really think this through and didn't have any leverage after that. But he was essentially just retelling something that happened, because there's a lot of just crazy stuff happening, especially in Florida. Like, their Senate representative is a guy who was in the largest case of Medicare fraud. And that sounds like a joke with all like the scams that have been going on in Florida, having a bunch of old people. It's like, oh yeah, Florida is represented by someone who did like elder fraud. But like, no, that happened. And GTA has to kind of deal with that now. Anything they come up with might be relatively not that interesting compared to just the normal happenings. Like, it's the same problem that like late night talk show hosts and like SNL has had, where before they would just like make a joke based off like Bush saying something kind of dumb and just have like an over-the-top kind of goofy version of him or whatever. But now you have like more entertaining, wackier figures like Trump and that Santos guy. So now they've just kind of turned into just like repeating what they said, basically, or something that happened with them. And that's basically what that trailer was. Like, I didn't realize it was just a bunch of references to real things. That should kind of make it less interesting. And honestly, a lot of that stuff isn't even particularly that outrageous. Like, there's a ton of other stuff where it's just like, how do the writers top that, right? Like, you know, GTA 5 had that stuff of like Life Invader making fun of like Facebook being privacy invasive or whatever. But now you have like, you know, one of the richest people in the world buying a social media website and then just doing stuff like replying to a comment about a politician's husband being attacked with, oh, there's more to this story, and then linking to a conspiracy theory website that said things like Hillary Clinton died and was replaced by a body double in the replies to Hillary Clinton. Like, that's just more outlandish than anything they said about like Life Invader. Well, I mean, they blew up the CEO, which I guess is kind of crazy, but, you know, in terms of actual like commentary, you know, like even in that trailer, there's like crazier versions of that. Like, the one thing I said about like robbing a fast food place with an alligator is crazier than just, you know, an alligator walking into a convenience store, which is basically just like a Florida version of just a common local news story. Or like that one woman like dual wielding hammers is kind of less crazy than that one kind of similar like reply to a borderline trespass of people walking near your property, right? Like that one woman with like mustard stains came out with a gun to yell at like protesters walking by their house to somewhere else. And then she was joined by her husband, who just like wasn't paying attention and was just like aiming the gun at her half the time, to where if his finger slipped, he would have just like blown her brains out by accident. Right? Like, they're kind of already showing that like the stuff they're throwing in there isn't crazier than reality. So how entertaining is the game gonna be? Especially when it kind of seems like it's grounded in like a more, I guess, serious relationship compared to the kind of goofier, kind of played for laughs things. You know, like GTA 4 is pretty serious in terms of like its themes, but you kind of still just have like a lot of time, the minute by minute stuff, which is like, you know, the wacky adventures of like Roman and just other weird characters. Whereas I don't know if that's really happening between like the two main people here, because it kind of seems like it's a little bit more serious Red Dead Redemption style relationship. But maybe none of that matters, because a lot of people kind of play these games just to, like, do crazy stuff in a city. I think. I don't know, people say that, but I kind of always wonder how true that is, though. Because, like, that seems like it would get boring. Like, you just pick up this game and just, like, do dumb stuff for a little while. Yeah, that's fun. For, like, a couple hours, and I don't know if that many people really buy a full-price game to just do that for a little bit. But then again, I never really understood the whole GTA Online thing, so maybe I'm not the best in determining sort of that, I guess, more casual, just mess around in a city type of gameplay experience. But still, in terms of actual, just like how good is like the single player story and satire and just like characters that kind of make these games interesting, possibly not really keeping up with reality, becoming more, I guess, interesting in some ways, I think might run into problems for people who care about jumping around the city to a bunch of different caricatures instead of just like seeing random Floridians that you saw on social media over the last like 5 years. Okay, like, hey, there's the guy who did like the crotch grab. I mean, Waluigi basically did that in a Nintendo game. So is that going to be enough to like be memorable in a Grand Theft Auto game?